Hello, everybody. I'm hoping that y'all can hear me. I'm going to check myself in the group really fast and let in any last minute people who are requesting. We are doing some free CME for NPs today to close out your work week. I hope y'all had a fantastic week. And I hope you're excited for just a little bit more. So this is fun stuff to me. We are going to be talking about some really interesting things that are being overlooked in a lot of scenarios. And also, you're going to get some free CME. All right, you may hear some echo back here in just a moment. Testing. Good. Okay, I can hear my own voice, which who likes hearing their own voice? If you like hearing your own voice recorded, you are not like me because I cannot stand it. But anyhow, we are going, okay, looks like we are live in the functional med course. Fantastic. Okay, y'all. So I'm just going to get our slides up here. If you are catching the replay within the last 24 hours of this recording, then you can still get the free CME. All right. So you have to watch at least 45 minutes of this recording. So that allows you to get up, go to the bathroom, show up late, jump off if you have jump off just a couple minutes early, something along those lines. But it's going to go for about an hour and you have to catch at least 45 minutes of it. If you're watching the replay, you need to watch the full amount to get the free CME. At the end of this, I will drop the link for you all so you can get that CMA. Like I said, it is free for the first 24 hours. After that, every CME that is done like this is going to be $10 a CME, which is still not really bad, to be honest. That's a lot less than most of us kind of pay. And I'm going to go ahead and get the slides up. So I came into the studio, which is, it's a virtual studio. This is my office in my home. But, and I uploaded the slides and they are not there now. So I will upload them. I had to change up. Good. Okay. They're right there now. I had to change it up a few times. So we're going to slide over. I'll be smaller, which makes me happier. I like looking at myself a little bit smaller, to be honest. Now, this is a full deck. We're not going to go through. If you can see 155 there, we're not going to go through all of that. Some of these we're going to come back to tomorrow. If you are interested in wanting more, then we are going to talk about that. We're going to talk about a few more things tomorrow, more of a kind of actually step back and look at the big realm in functional medicine, kind of some more protocols, how to do that. But we're just going to take a little bit deeper of a dive into functional medicine for autoimmunity. And let's see here. All right, so we are accredited. This slide actually says that it was submitted. This slide needs to be changed. And we are approved now for CME. We are one of the very, very, very few courses that will also allow you to become certified, board certified as a holistic nurse. I am working on getting the functional board happening and going. This is going to talk a little bit about functional medicine itself, how big of a deal it is. We are going to skip to the good stuff here, though, because we only have about 45 minutes and we have a lot to go over. But this really is true that chronic disease is on the rise, even though health intervention is. So many people, especially in the autoimmune world, they won't even get a diagnosis, an official diagnosis. They will have like a CRP, an ESR that's elevated. They may have like a rheumatoid factor that's elevated or that's positive, something along those lines. And all of a sudden they have normal labs and, the patient hears, congrats, everything's just fine. You are doing really, really well. And to many people, that's actually a discouragement because they want an answer. They want healing. And I think in these slides specifically, I'm actually going to share with you. Oh, sorry. I think I uploaded the wrong set here. We're going to get to those. They're all on here. I think I'm going to share with you on here someone who actually had a severe case of fibro. And she was kicked back as seeking for a long time and like a drug seeker. And then I looked at her under the functional scope and completely, we'll see what happened with her. All right, so why I'm teaching this to other nurses and practitioners First and foremost, I was asked to. So all of my FemPs now and my girls who are in Passion to Profit, who are in the Functional Mastermind, all of them, they actually found, they're like, you practice functional medicine? I said, yeah. And I've been doing it for a really long time. And they said, well, teach it to us. I said, okay. So I put a course together. And the way that I roll, if you're already on my courses, then you get grandfathered into pretty much anything, as long as you're in Passion to Profit. Pretty much anything else that we do, I grandfather you in, because I just love to share. I love to grow. I do not, just like I did a kind of funny reel on Instagram, and it was talking about how we are. Oh, before I get too far, I didn't admit a few people. How in the functional world, or I'm sorry, how in our world, in day-to-day world, how even like chicken breasts themselves are actually pumped full of phosphates and sodium in a process called plumping. You can look it up. It actually occurs. My mind was kind of blown whenever I learned about this. But chicken, even just chicken breasts, when people are trying to be really healthy, and I'm proud of you and I'm applauding you, they can actually be pumped full of chicken still. So, people really get to a point where they feel defeated, but that's why I'm doing these type of educations here and trying to hopefully spur some interventions that can really help change and save lives. I have a huge passion for this. As a mother, you can ask anyone. If you get me on a soapbox about the stuff that we give children and that we think is okay and that kids are going to run it off, and we're not worrying about the chemicals, the dyes, the added ingredients, the things that it's doing to our children's health. The reason why we're seeing autoimmunity in children, the reason why we're seeing all of these things happen, and then we learn things such as plumping and chicken. When somebody's trying to eat a whole food diet, they're still being forced to take that on. And it's just, I want to get the word out. I want it to be something that this changes it. Everyone who's in our group, and we're part of a movement. We really and truthfully are a part of a movement. And I think it is just imperative that we keep trying to honor ourselves and our health and not take it for granted. And part of that is being proactive and making sure that these things change. I do believe that nurse practitioners are key to implementing this, nurses and practitioners. And part of my course, I talk a little bit about, the difference between a nurse and a nurse practitioner in functional medicine. A lot of people will say, oh, it's the same thing. You can just do it. I'm going to tell you right now, if you're a nurse watching this, that is not true. Yes, you are welcome within the functional world, but you do have a different scope. Not that it's a bad scope. Not that it's a less scope. It is a very empowering scope, but it is slightly different legally. So you have to be aware of that. But nurses and practitioners are key for this. Why? Because we already, usually take the time to respect our patients and get down to the nitty and gritty and help them with making these changes and diving down deep. I mean, nurses and practitioners really are just known for that. I'm not downing any other profession out there. I have huge respect for everyone else in the medical profession. Everybody else from phlebotomist on. But I used to be a phlebotomist. It was one of my favorite jobs I've ever had. But we do that, right? We do that as nurses. We're proud of that. We take a holistic approach. We're more prone to do those things. That's typically what kind of brought us in to nursing, is that we loved the holistic view of the patient. And you're going to see in this model, when we start talking about autoimmunity specifically, how much this really is a whole body thing. This isn't just looking at one lab. This isn't just looking at one syndrome, one medication fits all. Like, this is really and truthfully holistic. And you're going to see, we do not have enough time to go into everything, but we're really going to dive in deep here. We're going to at least get kind of touched on everything. So I do see this as an opportunity, special opportunity for many individuals for prescription reduction. Now, I think I talked about this in some of my other slides, and I'm going to say it here. I'll breeze by it later if I do have another slide. But the thing is, and the reason why we are collaborating with Institute for Functional Nurses is because we do not believe, so Nurse Backpreneurs, my business, and Institute for Functional Nurses, I'm pulling those two together. And the reason being is that we are not anti-conventional medicine. I am not. You are not going to hear me say, and disclaimer, none of this is education to treat. This is information. This is for education and entertainment purposes only. I may be a provider. I am not your provider. So none of this can be translated. Same is truthful in your, you have to do diligence if you are a provider watching this and implementing this care with your patients. Not that anything is unsafe, but you have to use uh, your clinical judgment. So I do see this as an opportunity for prescription reduction, meaning that you're working with a specialist. If somebody has a specialist on board, I really hardly ever, rarely ever say, stop those medications. You don't need those medications. I believe that we should work with the specialist to try to wean them back, to try to get the underlying illness under control to a point where those medications can be weaned back if possible. I do not believe that this is a one size fits all. A lot of functional practitioners will tell you that, they really bash conventional medicine. We do not take that stance here with nurse practitioners and with the Institute of Functional Nurses. And, I really feel that the rest of it we'll touch at a different time. But I think that this is a really great opportunity for us to help reverse what we're actually seeing in individuals' health. And I'm going to pull my glasses up because I can actually see up close a little bit clearer without them. So the truth about autoimmunity and functional medicine, this is a process that occurs in those who are genetically susceptible. So just like not all smokers will get lung cancers, not all of those exposed to autoimmune triggers will get autoimmune disease. It's not like cancer in that it can go into, or it's not like cancer in that it can go into remission. Or is it like cancer? And I say that like, is it? Because there are some who have pretty miraculous stories that we would consider miraculous from a conventional model. That's not something we're going to touch in here, but I'm just saying, leaving that kind of caveat open. But this is something that whenever somebody is exposed to the triggers that we're going to talk about, or the thorns that you can look at them that way, and they are maybe even they're genetically susceptible to it, they can get autoimmune disease. And we're going to see how a lot of this is all the same. And depending on which organ is affected, that's which autoimmune disease you have or you end up developing. Thousands have actually reversed this process naturally. One of the things that actually made me go from believing that, oh yeah, right, poo-poo, if this was actually real, then I would have heard about it in my medical training and my nursing training. I would have learned about this. And so when I first heard about functional medicine, I really kind of rolled my eyes, to be honest with you. One of the things that actually opened my eyes is the amount of MDs, medical doctors also, who possibly they had autoimmune disease and they themselves didn't want to start the medications that we prescribe in general practice and in specialty. And they themselves dove down deeper and ended up going down this path of functional medicine, reversed there's tons of them out there. There's tons of stories out there. So this is something that has been reversed naturally. Once you're susceptible, I believe you are probably always susceptible, and you have to be on guard more than others. It's just like in a smoker, we can have somebody, we all know the grandfather or the grandmother who smoked into their 80s, 90s, and 100s, and they never developed lung cancer. They never even developed COPD or asthma. And we all know people who are just exposed as children, and that was their only exposure, is the parents smoked in the house while they were growing up, and they ended up developing COPD at a later age, and they never smoked a cigarette in their life. So just in the same way, there's just no absolute way of saying that one person is going to get it, you're not going to get it. So there is an out of control epidemic going on. There's been, in the last around couple of decades, there has been an increase in 44% of autoimmune diseases. So, and there are more also. Part of that is that we are discovering that so many more are actually part of autoimmune disease than we thought originally. So that is part of it. So that's where, I was talking about at the beginning of this, is it really an epidemic? Is it not? Is it really getting worse? And I'm going to check chat really fast. Oh, games aren't high. I'm fine, thank you. Just making sure I've talked before for 15, 20 minutes and nobody can hear my audio. But yay, I got audio today. So anyhow, but it is increasing and ever growing. And we're going to talk about some of the things that we've associated between autoimmunity. We're going to see that these are increasing at an exposure, incredible rate, and we're going to see kind of why. So this is the second highest chronic illness at this point in time. Top cause of morbidity for women in the U.S. And if we have time, we're going to talk specifically more about that. And it's going to be rather interesting for you, I believe, if you don't already know where I'm going with that. Okay, it is reported to be on the rise around the world. It's suspected to rival heart disease pretty soon. So we all know that heart disease is leading. And autoimmune disease is really it's coming up really strong. And it is very sad because it's something that affects people. Sometimes it's one of those invisible diseases where people you can't see what's going on. You can't visibly see that I'm really sick or that I'm really tired or that my body hurts all the time. And so people get put into this box and they themselves start thinking, well, maybe it's all in my head. I can relate to that myself. Thank you, the Lord. I thank the Lord. I do not have autoimmune disease, but I have, battled with my own issues before. And sometimes you just feel like, man, I know people think that I'm just making it up and that I don't really have these symptoms. And it's really hard. That was actually one of the first things that turned me to functional medicine. After I saw other people's stories, I thought, well, maybe this could also help with me. And that's not autoimmune related. I'm not going to share that right now this time because it's not totally appropriate if I want us to stay on track for the CME. But it can be really hard. So this is something, it's another reason why I really want to share this with other people and why we're doing this, free CME for 24 hours. More than 100 different AI autoimmune diseases identified, at least 40 more suspected to have relations to autoimmune disease. It is chronic, like I was saying before, can be life-threatening. It can affect any system. Triggers can include stress, viruses, bacteria, medications, hormones, and toxins. We're going to go deeper into that. It is a major cause of thyroid disease, estimated to be around 90% of thyroid diseases. We're not going into Hashimoto's itself is something that is a topic completely in its own. We're not going to go very deep into that, but I don't know what the drag to move. Oh, it's just on my side. Okay. Sorry, I had a pop up. Okay, so it is a major. Oh, sorry. Conventional medicine treats it as incurable, and really and truthfully, it is chronic. It does not go away. We can see patients go into remission. And I know a lot of people right now may be from I welcome to everyone from this, from the, if you're in the conventional side and you're firmly in the conventional side, you might really say there's no way that somebody can get better through, these types of interventions and through getting rid of these triggers. But I'm going to tell you right now that I've seen it firsthand in my patients. I've seen it firsthand in many testimonies of individuals. And I will say that it can go into remission. A lot of people will say that it is curable through functional. I will rival that. I will stay far enough on that side to say that I'm going to rival that. I think that it's always there. I think you're always susceptible once you're susceptible. Another thing about this that I always in our course and with IFN, we always want to make certain that we are not telling people again to stop your medications with your physician, with your doctor, if you are already under somebody's treatment. I do want everyone to recognize, and this is true, and this is where I have seen very sad cases on both sides. I have seen patients completely thrown away because they don't fit, conventional treatments, they don't work, they don't tolerate them, and therefore there's just no answer for them. And they could have had an answer in the functional world. I've seen the other side though, where individuals were completely discouraged from getting conventional treatment and their autoimmune disease got a lot worse. That damage, as it happens in autoimmunity, is oftentimes reversible, especially whenever it gets past a certain point. Therefore, I do not recommend, immunosuppressive drugs, DMARDs. Yeah, they're harsh. If we can avoid them, I'm going to say yes, let's try to, because they are just some rough and tough drugs. However, the caveat there is that they do work for a lot of people. A lot of people have too many side effects and they don't tolerate them. It's gonna come, both sides are going to have, their wins and their losses. And I'm just being very transparent, very real about that. I know a lot of functional providers, especially when they're on courses, they want to say that, oh, it's just going to cure everything and all. And this is really and truthfully something that we can often, majority of cases, we can make much, much better. But there's still cases, especially that will have to be on DMARC kind of stuff going forward. Okay, so let's move on. Trying to keep track of time. Okay, now this is where we're going to get a little bit controversial. And like I said, I've already said I am not anti-conventional medicine. I'm really not. IFN, we're not anti. Okay, but sometimes you read these type of things and it makes you a little bit cringy, right? It makes you, I think it's a new term going around, cringy. Best-selling drugs of all time. Humira joins the elite. And it's like, there's people on the other side of that. And I get that it's a business and that in order to be able to get these medications to people, we have to have, there has to be a profit behind it. If you want to just be really realistic, I'm not saying, one way or the other on that, but isn't that a little cringy? Isn't that just a little bit, maybe there is a reason to not get people out of what they're doing to suppress the symptoms and not be working at the root cause? I don't know. It's a little bit tricky for me to say, "Oh, absolutely not." Um, I forgot what it was that I was going to actually highlight on this. Um, on the next slide, though, so that was an older article, and then this was a newer one. And it's still Humira is like a top 2024 all-time star. It's an all-star drug, right? And I mean, I will say that in that, those are patients who are getting better, at least in the short term. And I'm not going to sit here and bash that necessarily, but I don't know. It was looking at the money. It wasn't really looking at the outcome. So call it what it will. Like I said, though, we're not going to throw any babies out with the bathwater. Okay, so both of them have their good sides. I've already really kind of talked about that, so we're not going to go back over that. We can slip that side if you're watching the replay. You feel free to pause it. I've really just pretty much said all of it that's on that slide. I get ahead of myself sometimes. Sorry. Um, autoimmune disease, though, the effects on society, it is a $100 billion. Um, if you can hear my baby in the background. Speaking of baby in the bathwater, um, he's being watched right now by my mom. If you can hear him crying in the background, he's not alone. I promise. He's well taken care of. But so estimated to be 100 billion annually. All right. So that means that that is a tall stake on society. I've always, we add these in here because people always, focus on that and looking at it. It shows us a good way of like showing the impact of the disease. To me, the money and the cost doesn't mean a whole bunch to me. It's the individual that I'm working with, but we can just see it. Just, gives us another way of looking at numbers and how much of a big impact this has. So this is also something we are going to skip by. So we might talk about this. Is actually for if you are wanting to start your own practice, if you want to do your own thing. So the slides that I had up here, not that that doesn't apply to the functional practitioner, but it's not what we're talking about with the CME. So, okay, so into autoimmunity and talking more about the triggers and what we know, what we can kind of how we can really intervene. We look at this as a triad. So the goal of it is to treat the root cause. And now we're going to talk a little bit about what are some of those root cause and how does this actually differ from conventional treatment. Well, it differs from conventional treatment in that conventional treatment will suppress the symptoms, right? It suppresses the immune system, allows people to feel better, but it's not getting rid of the underlying fire. So it's kind of like shutting off a smoke alarm. If you have a fire in a house and the smoke alarm's going off and you turn off that smoke alarm, well, you're not annoyed anymore, right? But the fire's still going on. The smoke is still around. And functional medicine goes in to really try to put out that fire. So then the smoke alarm goes off. So then the symptoms stop. And especially when we're talking about autoimmune, there is sometimes a balance there, but that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to re-regulate the immune system. We're going to talk about that, different triggers, gastrointestinal dysfunction. So if you are already familiar with root cause treatment, if you're already somebody who is practicing in that, there's no surprise to you the gut association with this. It is really, really huge. This is where it is literally, guys, it's literally a holistic approach because it has to be. The body is not just the brain, the body, the heart, the guts, the immune system. It's not all separate. We learn it all separate, but it's not all separate. It is all one. And if you're like me and very biblical in everything that you look at, that is also biblically true. It is all one. We are all one. So it makes perfect sense. And then let me get that caption off there for just a second, hide that so then you can see necrosis and cell death. So that also leads to kind of a buildup, a strain. When we're looking in the functional model, we are looking at the overall stress load on the individual. So it can be, and it often is, more than one thing. And that's why a lot of the times we'll try a few different interventions, or people in not saying somebody who's a very versed functional practitioner role, but somebody in general. They'll read an article and they'll say, "Oh, I'm going to get rid of bread. That's my problem." And they get rid of bread and they maybe feel good for a little bit, and then they go right back to feeling horrible again. They're like, "What is going on? Why do I still feel bad?" It's often more than one thing that's going to kind of break the bank, or break the bank's not the right. It takes more than one. Like, there's one straw, right, that breaks the camel's back, but it was several before that actually built up that load. Same thing whenever we're looking at especially autoimmune disease, is it is more than one thing that builds up. So the immune dysregulation, GI health, necrosis, cell death, across the wide span of the body is really what ends up leading to people having the symptoms of it. So it's the damage to the generation of tissues and cells that cause them to leak cell fragments. So these are called, or especially nucleoproteins into the blood. It causes increased antibody formation to the cell, and especially in the nucleoproteins. So this is, like I said, one etiology, one cause within that it can happen. Weak immunity allows for the stealth or latent pathogens to linger unchallenged, leading to an overactivity in the acquired immune system. State of immune danger or high alert or reactivity also causes more than necrosis. The dysbiosis, which is usually, like, dysbiosis can be on skin flora, it can be on gut flora. So here, like I've already alluded to, eczema, excuse me, those type of things. Vaccine adjuncts. So I'm not stepping down a political role here. I know, like I said, the V word, but they do cause, they are built in order to actually to trigger our immune system. So there is some association there. It helps break down the immune regulation. And I'm not an anti-veer, okay? But I have, so I'm just putting it out there in a very transparent way. That the vaccines do play a part, that can play a part, because they do, or it is theorized to. And a direct immune attack on the necrotic tissue. Emotional, cognitive stress, we're going to talk about that a little bit more. We're going to talk about even how, hopefully we'll have time to get to it. If not, we'll finish up tomorrow. But how the stress in your body, mental stress, not just physiological stress, but your psychological stress, can change your hormones, and how it can lead to a big part of autoimmune disease. I've seen, and that's really no surprise if you're a practitioner. That's really not a surprise, even if you hadn't thought about it that way. Most of us have had a patient that came to us, and when they get upset, and I've seen it happen more than one time, and whatever, I was in just conventional office, patient would come to me and they would get upset, especially talking about, how bad this is hurting their life and impacting their relationship with their family, and how much it's just really bringing them down, and they feel like a failure, and they feel that, other people see them as a failure and not as somebody who is sick. And we're talking about, kind of that, that silent disease where it's you can't really see from the outside, and their symptoms literally get worse sitting there even in that moment. And so it's really no surprise. If you really look at that, you think, "Oh, that does make a lot of sense." I myself, if I'm sick and I'm getting stressed because I have to still work or do something, I remember running off to the office and I'd be kind of sick, and I would get more stress. My symptoms would get way worse. It does. It beats down your immune system. Stress beats it down. Gastrointestinal dysfunction, dysbiosis. So this means that you don't have, if you're not familiar with it yet, that means that you don't have enough of the good and too much, or not enough of the good, or too much of the good sometimes, or you have too much bad in there. The gut flora is off, and that leads to a danger state. And overreactivity in the acquired immune system. We're going to talk about leaky gut. I have some slides on that going forward also. But the intestinal permeability, it increases, that leads to foreign proteins entering the blood, entering parts of the body they're not supposed to. They're supposed to really stay confined within that, within those tight junctures within the gastrointestinal mucosa. And whenever that happens, it can also lead to more inflammation in the body, and the body further goes into fight or flight. or I'm sorry, not fight or flight, but stress on the overall load of the body. Immune regulation. So these are some of the possible treatment. These are treatment examples. This is by no means something that you can just take this and go, right? This isn't an exact, because each individual person is going to be different. We're going to be talking about that going forward. But sometimes it's the FODMAP for certain people. FODMAP diet is something that is tries to decrease trigger foods, and patients can stay on that. Mediterranean diet sometimes is good. However, we're going to talk about gluten and that autoimmune disease. Pretty much everybody, I'm not totally anti-gluten, not anti-bread, but especially when we're an autoimmune disease, we really are there. And we're gonna see things going forward and how really and truthfully gluten is a major trigger for most people. And it's usually always a big part of the cycle. And that is completely separate than if you have celiac disease. You can still be gluten sensitive. That can still be adding to a patient's issues that gluten can, and they do not have celiac disease. Before I was really fully versed in functional medicine, I used to say, no, there's no way if you're not celiac disease. Very few people are celiac disease. And if you're not, then that's not, your situation. And that I was inaccurate in saying that. Whenever I used to say that, I was inaccurate. Health Daily Fundamental Packs, botanicals such as echinacea. These are, like I said, these are just examples to kind of help you see like what we can be doing for people. In our full course, we really talk about, the percentage of studies that back this up as being effective versus not, because there is sometimes a little bit of controversial in there, but the botanicals, Vitaminox, Burbine Active, prebiotics, daily fiber, SIBO testing, if you're not familiar with. So a lot of the times also people have SIBO if they have autoimmune disease, short intestinal bacterial overgrowth. And SIBO is, a lot of the times we have that constipation with it. People tend to be constipated. It tends to be IBD with, C dominant. Those type of individuals, that's somebody that you really need to go ahead and get a SIBO breath test for them and check that out, especially if they have autoimmune and they have constipation, they have gut bloating and dysregulation. You really need to be checking into SIBO and testing for that. And also, guys, if you have any questions, drop them in the chat. Increased resistance to starches. You can also check that on organic acids test. And see, how well they're digesting those starches. So those are all, testing that you're going to do for this is checking a GI map, checking an organic acids test. This is also, oh yes, this is the right case study. Okay, so one of the things that we're going to touch, this is the actual case study here we're going to talk about. And this is an individual, she was not breastfed as an infant. Why does that even matter? Why would that even matter? If you know, drop it in the chat. I'd love to see if anyone on here is kind of versed in this. And this is something that I'm a breastfeeding mommy times two, so it really excited me to learn this. I am a huge fan and supporter of breastfeeding mothers. And this really just blew my mind when I learned this. And I still love sharing about this today. It gets me excited every single time I get to talk about it. Breastfed babies have a different gut flora than babies who are fed on formula. Yes, gut flora development early in life. You slid it in there like right as I said it. So I know you got it. Thank you so much, Facebook user. And if y'all can, save your names in there so I can really have a great conversation with you. I bet I know who that one is though. But anyhow, so yes, it absolutely makes a difference going forward. So if somebody ends up developing a dysbiosis even really young in life, they maybe can for a long time, they can maybe be able to compensate for that. Their body can compensate. But as we get older and we develop that SIBO, I'm going to say it again, repetition helps you remember things, SIBO, short intestinal bacterial overgrowth, then they have an increased risk for this autoimmune disease. Even if they don't have SIBO itself. Allie, yay! All right. Thanks for joining us, sister. So yeah, you'll be able to don't forget to grab your CME at the end of this. So Yeah, that makes a huge difference going forward. So that's where I'm saying we literally look at the root cause and we dive down deep and find every little thing that we can about the individual that makes a big difference. This person here, they did have a history of methamphetamine use. I mean, the amount of inflammation in somebody's body, there's absolutely no surprise if that's something that's going on, then it's going to cause, they're much, much higher risk for chronic pain, fibromyalgia, all the things. But this really just demonstrates how much strain this person's body has had on them. I mean, it's just, you just can't even put in perspective, right? Family history of fibro, lupus, Sjögren's, lifelong pain. They had positive ANA at age 5. They had gas and bloating forever. So obviously somebody to do a GI map on. They did have the ANA pattern, nuclear homogeneous. Now, whenever we're going in for in-depth labs like this, I'm not going to break it down because IFN does assume that you are a nurse or practitioner going forward. So you should kind of already have this figured out. Their thyroid labs were really, really bad. Where's it? Yeah, the TSH is a 99.7. I mean, it really just was bad scenario, right? So we did correct the probiotics. We treated for constipation dominance, thorn liver detox, especially with the drug use. That was a very important thing to do. You do need to do this in a stepwise. Usually we might correct some of the dysbiosis first. We do need to clear out the liver first before we start adding on everything else to make sure the liver can function well. Now, let me tell you this. This is even though the AST/ALT is within normal limits, okay? Levothyroxine was continued for a while because the TSH was very high. Now, in the functional world, we would hopefully be able to get them off of that. That causes problems kind of down the road. However, this patient was very extensive case. And the reason why I chose to talk about this patient is because I want you to see like how dramatic of an improvement they had just with helping them correct that dysbiosis, get them off of gluten, get them on the right area, get them down the right track, and how fast this can actually happen, even for somebody who their body has been through so very much. Okay. So you can consider low dose naltrexone. Also, that's immunomodulator. It helps to rebalance the immune system. It's one of the few medications that might be considered in the functional world, and helping them with inflammatory bowel disease. Oh, it's been known for that. Stress management, so helping them with adaptogens can be a really great way also to help with any kind of, we're already at 4:39. I was looking at the time there. To help them with decreasing their stress, adaptogens can be really great for that. Ashwagandha is usually kind of my first go-to. Gluten-free diet, and then kind of delaying the hypersensitivity for them. Oh, I'm sorry. Hypersensitivity, delayed hypersensitivity can be positive. So you can be, your IgMs when it's made can be negative, but then your IgGs can also be positive. And I know there's some controversy in that especially when you're talking about the conventional world. But I'll tell you right now that I see it. I've seen it in practice a lot. So we've already kind of talked about that. Oh, no, I didn't want to talk about this just really quick. This is a super interesting thing. Gluten and dairy-free diet. So we did implement that. And the reason why gluten, as much as, man, I just hate it, right? I hate saying that gluten is because I am a bread person too. Like, don't get me wrong. I am a cereal rehabber. I love cereal. I used to. I haven't eaten cereal in forever. Don't get me started on the BHT that they spray into the boxes, all the things. But I do. I love it, but it's especially in autoimmune disease, you got to kick it out. Have to kick it out. Molecular mimicry. So it says where the genetic profile of the gluten protein is molecularly similar to many of the tissues of the human body. So the immune system actually tags it as an inflammatory something that can trigger the inflammatory process. And then because the tissues of the human body are also similar, they say, "Ooh, you're also bad." And they attack the body. Okay, so that's one theory behind how this can actually be triggering autoimmune disease. So that is why, especially having that science base, I would say no gluten. Like, we have to kick it out. And I'm telling you, people do make a huge difference, sometimes with just that alone. Usually, like I said, there's more than one thing, and we're going to try to get through at least most of the other triggers there because there's several. Casein and dairy is actually found to be similar. And believe me, I used to love my dairy too. So I'm here with you on that. And this was a quote that I received for after 5 weeks of intervention. Like, yes, it's not a medication, and then within 3 days, their symptoms are decreased. But this is actually helping them long term. This is one helping them to not have the disease worsen at a fast rate. This is taking away a lot of the triggers that's causing their body to get worse, that's causing their body to actually react and attack itself. It's saving tissue in the future, and it is literally getting things at the root cause. So it's just incredible with what some things you can do. Now, I'm not saying that you do need to be doing testing on the person. I say test, don't guess. And you need to know which test that you're going to do, which test you should do. I have seen functional practitioners say, you know, well, I just do this on everybody. I do this test on everybody, and recommend this to everybody. And it's the fast way to get them, fast way to just get them in, get them out. Oh my goodness. Like, I am just appalled by that. I'm absolutely appalled by that, because you're really just running patients through. And I have no hesitation. This is a live video. I have no hesitation if somebody who does that sees this, because that is not right. And you are not practicing good, sound judgment and medical intervention with individuals. That is especially where I found it was one of the reasons why it was created is to have a group of individuals who look at it from a place of, this isn't something that we just, change everybody, put everybody on this diet and take this test for everybody and do, that is really just wrong. And sometimes, I work with my patients. Sometimes these tests can be really expensive, and I have to understand my patients at a deep level, and you should too. And that sometimes they're like, I can't even afford that test. And then we'll work with them. I will actually, we'll do the interventions that they need. It takes a little bit more time, and I certainly like to test, not guess, but we can sometimes, slow it down and really find you've got to learn patience at that level, or you won't be able to do that for people. And to me, that's what's actually, rewarding in all of this. So we're gonna move on from there, but they did ended up their symptoms ended up getting so much better. We've talked about leaky gut, so we might kind of spread through this too, because it is 4:45 almost. But we already talked about leaky gut syndrome. You can read that slide going back if you would like. Another treatment consideration is adrenal fatigue. There is some controversy over whether adrenal fatigue itself exists. Now, there's no controversy over the fact that stress can affect our immune system and can be a trigger for autoimmune disease. However, some people say, adrenal fatigue is just blah, blah, because a lot of times their cortisol is normal. You do all of the fancy testing for cortisol. If you're going to do cortisol, you want to do saliva, but do all that fancy testing, and then it comes back totally normal for patients. And that's why, that's kind of the argument. Whenever we're just looking at, the numbers, well, then that might be something that we see. But I'll tell you that I've seen enough adrenal fatigue where we correct that, we treat based upon that, and their symptoms go away. The cold hands, the cold feet, the, cup that's full of, already full of water, and you're walking around trying not to, one little drop goes into the cup and then it spills out everywhere. That person, kind of an analogy there is, one little thing and they just trigger, they set off and they get upset. And, that's part of the adrenal fatigue, the body not being able to counteract and be able to adapt to stressors, to physiological and mental stressors. This also affects the chronic sex hormones. I hope we're going to get to one of those slides here coming forward, because it's just really interesting to see that how it actually works. Liver detoxification, we talked about that. There can be parasitic involvement. That's something else that we can screen for, and a whole nother discussion that we could talk about. Nutrition deficiency, that's especially with your organic acids test will come in. Nutritional deficiency is a form of stress that can also lead to the root cause. And I'm not just talking about, I screened their B12. Not just talking about that. I'm talking about really looking at what are their cofactors. Are they actually able to utilize the B12 that they have in their system? Because not everybody is, because of other cofactors that we have to have. We didn't talk about mitochondria on this. How are their mitochondria functioning, though? Do we need to start them on like a CoQ10? That's another case. I'm trying to give you a good encompassing idea of all the different things that we can do and the different things that have been associated with it without going off too far. But Iodine deficiencies in the thyroid, that's something you do not just take this and put somebody on it. You have to, there's a lot in depth in it, but those are also things to consider. Hormonal imbalances, antigen exposure to medications, vaccinations. We're going to talk about, Roundup especially has been something that's been in the spotlight a lot here lately, and it's something that the functional world was already talking about before it was ever, you know, all over the tabloids. Okay, so that's something else that is the exposure to that in foods and in processed things, and that's it's part of the reason why I don't want my child exposed to all of the chemicals and anything that is packaged. I really try so hard to keep him off of those, and not introduce them into, I'm saying him, I have 2 sons, but the one is still mostly breastfeeding. And why we really need to be doing that, because guys, I'm going to tell you what, the food in our world is not, I mean, it's safe until proven otherwise. The chemicals, the red dyes, the yellow dyes, the BHT, the BVO and Sprite, I mean, just, the dioxide, like there's just so many different things that it drives me crazy. So feel free if you want to add on that in the chat. I would love to hear y'all's responses. I should maybe like give out, it's too late to do that now, but next time I think I'll probably do like, so many chats. Like if you interact with me, then you get like we can set you up for more CME or something like that. Getting you free CME courses. But letting the body heal. Sex hormones are kind of like children. If you have others that one requires too much attention, then the other ones won't get the attention that they need. The first hormone becomes depleted, and it tends to be the progesterone, which leads to estrogen dominance. Remember, if you recall at the very beginning of this, which that is another, I love like helping people be super learners, and that's one thing that is really great for memory or attention is coming back, pulling something that you had from the back and pulling it back up to the front. And that's specifically why some of my slides and my education presentations that I do, I'll do them in that way, because then you can say, oh yeah, I remember that too. And you're more likely to remember that. Remember whenever I spoke, and put in the chat if you remember what does it have to do with estrogen that I was talking about at the very beginning of this presentation. Remember that I said autoimmune disease tends to be females. We have a higher rate of females in autoimmune disease. And they have a higher tendency to have estrogen dominance. It's a significant driver in why 80% of autoimmune disease cases are women. And men, low testosterone can be a driver for chronic disease in itself, can lead to a lot of different issues. There's 3 types of estrogens. We don't probably need to go into that in too much depth with this, but that is, especially if you're treating and you are balancing hormones, that is something that you need to know. Rebalancing estrogen dominance, not exactly. We could definitely go into that, but I think we're not going to. VOC, so the volatile organic compounds, paints, herbicides, fungicides, Glade plugins, dryer sheets. There's tons of reasons that can be toxic stressors that can actually be a contributing factor to that overall stress load on the body. Heavy metals, especially cadmium. I spoke about before about sodium and essential hypertension, those type of things. Cadmium is also one of them that can be a cause for essential, meaning we don't know the cause of it, hypertension. That's something else to possibly screen for. So there's just another little gold, or not gold, but a little medical pearl there for you. Cleaning products, methylation. So some people are poor methylators. And I think that's pretty much it. So it's at least enough, right? It's at least, I think, a lot of information. So I hope it wasn't too much. Let me go ahead and get you all so I have this super great, you can go to get your CME. So you should be able to see at the very bottom of this, you can actually see, so this is not going into a different discussion here on the slide. Let's go ahead and take down the slides. All right, so you can go to this link right here, and then that will actually take you to where you can receive your CME. So you need to let me know if you're doing the replay. You need to let me know if you are doing if you were here live with us. And, if you were live for part of it, you can definitely go back through to the replay, watch the parts that you missed, and then let me know about that. I can kind of see, I have a good general idea of it who are live, and it is only live for 24 hours because that's how I can also, why it's free for 24 hours, because that's a way that I can judge and track people. And then the links themselves are tracking, just so you know. But so it's a little bit of honor system, but there's also, we can actually track them and go back to them. So answer those questions for us. We really appreciate your involvement in this. And we're going to be doing kind of like a part 2 tomorrow, February at 9 a.m. February 11th. I cut myself off. February 11th at 9 a.m. We're going to be doing kind of a part 2. We're going to be diving into more of kind of actually stepping it back. Like, we maybe should have done that one first, but we're going to be stepping back and looking at functional medicine model as an overall. I think it's going to be really good. Even if you already are a FMP, a functional integrative medical practitioner with us, then, this will still be a really great review for you. And then we always have our 10 o'clock meeting every week with our providers and those who are building businesses with us. So hopefully you caught that. If not, you can pause the replay, but it's just the bit.ly link /CMEs for NPs. And you can fill that out and we'll get you the CME sent to you. So it's a super awesome, neat way of doing this. And then also we want to let you know that IFN is now accepting applications. So if you go to the bit.ly link, bit.ly, I think you actually have to put the HTTPS :/ before that. But then the bit.ly /IFN application, then you should be able to reach the application there. And if this is something that you want to do, we are accepting enrollment for the spring coming forward. And, it's something that is very all-encompassing. You have a full year. Depending on kind of the support you want, you can kind of choose out the package that you want. If you're accepted, you do have to do the application. So I'm not guaranteeing anybody just by watching this that you're accepted. But going forward, we do have packages to help people from zero. If you just want to do everything on your own, to a full year of help with that. And you also get to be plugged into an amazing community of nurses and practitioners who will help support you and who will, we can bring case studies to each other, and it's real providers helping real patients, and you can have that collaboration. I think that's the biggest thing that stops most people, is that they don't feel like they have that community in order to build up their rapport, to build up their mindset, their educational base, but then also their confidence. And seeing others and having others there to support you is a really great way to do that. So we're accepting applications now. Feel free to place one of those. If you ever have any problems with that, you can always reach me at drlauren@nursepracpreneurs.com. That's my email. You can always shoot me a message, shoot me an email through that. But I appreciate you all being live. So that does conclude our stream today. We're going to start doing this probably pretty weekly. So I think this is a really fun way. If you're catching the replay past the 24 hours, then it'll just be $10 for you to be able to get the CME for that. But you will still use that same link there, and we'll know based upon when you apply. So you do have to put in your time. Like, you have to fill out that form within the 24 hours in order to get the CME free. You can get the CME going forward for as long as this is live. But yeah, so thanks so much for jumping on, guys. This was a lot of fun, and many blessings. Have a fantastic weekend. And for some of you, I will see you tomorrow. Actually, I was ending it and I needed to. We'll be going live tomorrow here in the same spot. It might be a little bit of a different link, but if you're on the email list, then you were emailed that. So you should have the second link there. If you want the second link and you did not receive it, you're not already on the email list, or I did not send you a personal message, then again, drlauren@nursepracpreneurs.com, or whenever you fill out the form here, there's plenty of room for you to add those comments there. I'll be sure to kind of check those before we go live. Tomorrow at 9 a.m. We'll be doing more free CME, all about functional medicine. So many blessings, y'all. Have a great weekend. Bye.